Hi, it's Darren from SimNation again. Just want to do a quick video to recap the WWPF season. For those of you not aware, WWPF is the SimNation Draft Day Sports College Football 2023 league from Wolverine Studios, who makes Draft Day Sports. It's a long-standing league. It goes really probably back to the beginning of SimNation. So it has a very long storied history. We definitely are looking for coaches if you want to join a league with lots of competition, a good solid college football league that feeds it, and just a great atmosphere on the Slack channel. This definitely would be a league for you. There's been some changes this season, which has made it life a little bit more interesting, especially for me. Um, for those of you who will, Gary and Frankie were the long-standing commissioners. Skelter was for a while before the anti-Skelter code drove him away. But they decided to take a break at the beginning of the season. I agreed to take over the league. I have SNCFL, which is the college league, and it's been an interesting journey through this season. And the season itself has been a little bit different. In the NFC, I will say the um, stepping away of Gary has created a little bit of a vacuum in the NFC. Gary was one of the powerhouse coaches over at Philadelphia. And then in the AFC, we'll talk a little bit more about this. Oakland has been uncharacteristically losing. And let me put that in perspective. 12-4 for Peter is like a 6-10 season for most people. Peter is without a doubt probably one of the most dominant coaches I've seen in an online sports league. I will say that if you go back to the beginning of WWPF, you probably would see some coaches like this. But without a doubt, I mean, in real life, he doesn't have a comparison. You would have to go into something like college football or maybe go into something like college lacrosse to find someone who's been as dominant as he has. Um, he's still in it, and we'll talk about the playoffs in a moment, but we can go from there. But if you're interested in joining, I'll put the links in the video. Definitely come take a look at us. We're looking for new coaches. We have a lot of great teams open, um, and I'll definitely look forward to seeing you. Now, I'm not going to talk about the playoffs initially, but I will come back and talk about them in a moment. So we'll go ahead and just kind of dive into the dynamic of this season. Of course, this is the first season on Draft Day Sports College Football 2023. For those who play I'm sorry, pro football, not college, but for those who play the college football, they kind of got a little bit used to some of the changes that were coming. The two games are different, but there's certain things that mirror. And for the coaches who don't potentially play in the college football, they didn't have a point of reference for what was coming. So I think it took them maybe a little bit longer to figure it out, but once they figured it out, like Peter, he's on a roll. But I digress. So if we look at the NFC, Detroit is in the first year with Pops, and for those of you who've heard the recent video I did on SNCFL, that name kind of rings a bell, right? Pops is a coach over in the SNCFL as well. He's really done a great job with the Detroit Lions. He should be really proud of the work he's done there. Minnesota is run by a longtime coach in this league, Rick. And again, he's really turned that team around and done a pretty fantastic job there. Um, when we talk about the East has traditionally been Philadelphia. I realize I'm probably going to get in a little bit of trouble there by saying that, but um, this season with Gary taking a step back, Don Luckey took over the Philadelphia Eagles, and he's done a really good job of guiding them through a really good season. But Templar, it's like the moment that Gary left, Templar found his second wind, and he's just having a tremendous season at Dallas. Washington and New York probably didn't meet the expectations of Udo and Cable. We talked about Cable in SNCFL. He's going to get the first round pick. He is a coach in the SNCFL, so he's going to have some immediate thoughts about who he may draft, and he may very well draft his quarterback at UCF. Um, some names should sound familiar, like at San Francisco, you have Stu. Stu is my Newman in SNCFL, but he is a tremendous coach here as well. And he's done a really phenomenal job uh, with San Francisco. Um, the rest are really CPU, or their season has been such that maybe it's not quite what they wanted. AFC, the big story here has been Oakland. Um, just to put this in context, if I were to go here and show you Oakland from a history perspective, what you would almost immediately see, and I'm going to do it because you, if you're not new to if you're not part of this league, you don't understand just how dominant Peter has been. So Peter started before it says Peter. We'll just put that in perspective. But if you look at this, he won really, what is that, five or six championships in a row. He lost to Gary on this one, and then he won it again. And he literally, for most of these seasons, has lost no more than a game. And he's been dominant across the board when it comes to offense and defense. So for him to be at 12-4 this season, it's new territory for him. Now, I will say that if you ask me today to pick who I think is going to win the Super Bowl, it's Oakland. He has a tough playoff game with a team that beat him earlier in the season. Generally, the rule with Peter is you want to get him early in the season because you have a better chance of beating him before his ability to game plan really kicks off and when he can't actually see what you've been doing. But the whole AFC West is just, they're cracked. I mean, San Diego had a coach. He stepped away this season, but both Kansas City and Denver have human coaches as well. And that whole conference just has really just done great in my eyes. So Prince, of course, is the Denver coach. James is the Kansas City coach, and historically, in the last few seasons, the AFC West has just been dominating everybody. It's like they're sharing the Kool-Aid over there. Um, the East is a pretty good league in itself. Of course, DP is the New York Jets coach. Him and Shark, who's at New England, typically have a pretty good rivalry going on with each other. Um, DP has been strong throughout the year. He's got one of the best quarterbacks in the league, who just seems to get hurt all the time. And every year it seems like DP's having to go find a quarterback because his top two quarterbacks get hurt. Um, Buffalo Bills is Chandler. Miami is Soa. They've had a pretty decent season. Probably would want it to be better. Um, I don't remember if we have a coach. I don't think we have a coach in the South. So if you're interested, the South is wide open. Tennessee's a great team, so is Jacksonville. And then in the AFC North, there are three human coaches here. Pittsburgh is my team. That record is obscene. I traditionally am the number two seed in the last few seasons in the playoffs, although I'm a one and doneer most seasons. Um, but Cleveland and Cincinnati both have very strong human coaches. Chris has been away at Cincinnati for a little bit. I hope he comes back. Cleveland, of course, is Bio, and he's a really good coach. It's just he hasn't been able to get the success he wanted this season. So, all in all, very good league, lots of things going on. If we look at the playoffs, the wild card just finished, um, and we're just going to go to a bracket. So, San Francisco, Dallas was one of the games. Dallas won that game. Um, and then, of course, Atlanta beat Minnesota. Um, Not sure why it's doing that, but we'll go backwards real quick. So you have, 1 second, so I can see the other ones. Um, so you've got a good matchup of Dallas versus Los Angeles. That's Templar versus CPU. You have Atlanta versus Detroit. I believe that is also going to be Pops versus the CPU. And then on the flip side, you have Oakland versus New York. So that's Pito versus DP. DP did beat him earlier this season, so I think he's hoping that he gets a repeat. And then, of course, you have the Steelers versus the Chargers. Now, the dynamic here is the Chargers have bounced me from the playoffs at least twice in the last like 5 years, and not by small margins. They've just crushed them. They have a cracked quarterback this year who's kind of pulling a Tom Brady on everyone. So my hope is that my new philosophy will work, and I'll be able to actually make it into really the next round. But we'll see. From a league leader's perspective, Tyler Overton is the guy I'm talking about from San Diego. He's been off the charts in almost every category. Um, you'll see passing yards, passing touchdowns. He's having actually a season that Joe Rayner normally has. And of course, the years have caught up to Joe Rayner, but he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and just has been a mainstay. I know that Peter uh, drafted the quarterback from Ohio State, Denham, last year, but Denham didn't have a good year this year, so he plugged back in Joe Rayner, and off he goes. Um, and then if you look at rushing yards, Denver has a terrific offense. Unfortunately, they drew, I believe, Peter in the first round of the wild cards, and that kind of hurt him. Soa has a good running back in Michael Tam. And then you have a whole bunch of other running backs after that. But this league is a little bit more wide open in the rushing, I'm sorry, in passing than like SNCFL, where it's more rushing focused. Of course, DP has really good wide receivers, which makes him dangerous because you see like two of the top five are from the Jets, which just really talks about if he wasn't dealing with injuries this year, I imagine Spriggs would be up there. No one really cares about tackles, but as you can see, is again the Jets have a pretty good defense with two of the top tacklers, and of course Rick has the top at Minnesota. Sack wise, this one I always regret William Tate. He was a longtime Steeler. I traded him to Baltimore, and I don't know what I was thinking. I should have traded the other defensive end I had, Santos. But Tate has been pretty strong for years. Hickson is a guy I'm very high on, and I'm glad that I didn't trade him to Peter this year because he's having a really good year. Reyes is just another in a long line of great defensive ends from Peter. Um, and then on the opposite side is you can see that there's quite a few people who have six or more picks. Flores is a guy I like a lot, who I brought in. And then, of course, Tyler Overton is the top performer in the league by a significant margin, with, of course, Leon Grill second. So that's kind of where we're at. I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about WPF. Uh, so great league, lots of open teams, and I think I'll just show you this. So as you can see, they're open teams. If you're interested, definitely join us. The dynamic in Slack is really good. It's really positive. People help each other. There aren't a lot of people who do content like in SNCFL, but at the same time, it is a very competitive league. If you join this league for nothing else, it'd be to try to beat Peter and stop him from winning another championship. It's really hard to do because he's a very good coach. He's great at recruiting. He's great at picking people up in free agency, which is why his teams are always so strong at what they do. If we go to the almanac, and I'm not logged in as the commish because I just don't want to do that today. Uh, and we look at like some of the different things, is what you'll notice right off the bat is Joe Rayner is just hands down in the regular season one of the top quarterbacks of all time. And then if we look at rushing, you're going to probably see something again. It'll take a second to show up. But I can't say enough about Joe Rayner. But he has a lot of the best people in the history of the league have played through Peter. As you can see, Adolfo Crawley was really his best years were in Oakland. Um, doesn't make sense. And that 144 touchdown thing is just obscene. So as soon as it comes back, um, eh, Crawley is just you can't say enough about the dude. The dude was like a beast for uh, him for a long time. Marion Cheezel is someone to keep an eye on as well. It's going to change here in a second because I chose receiving, but I forget who Ray Kitchens played for. But Xavier Smart was he was a long time Seahawk. He did phenomenally with catches. Xavier Smart is actually one of the WWCF players. The feeder to WWPF used to be a bowl-bound league called WWCF, which is still active, by the way, at SimNation. And of course, that's bowl-bound college football, which is the Grey Dog software title. Um, so he came over from there. But Kitchens is like one of the all-time greats. As we look at kind of how the year is going to probably end, one of the things that you will kind of notice almost immediately is uh, there's a pretty wide open race for league MVP. I think Overton's going to win it. If he doesn't, there's kind of something wrong though. Offensive MVP, Overton should win it. Defensive MVP is going to be interesting because you have so many different things. You can make you can make the argument that Parker should win it because he has the tackles and the sacks. But I think it's going to be interesting to see if it's Tate. I don't think it should be Hickson. I actually think Reyes should have it. They are having an interesting back and forth battle. Will, if I were to show you Hickson, while he doesn't get as many sacks as many other people, him and Reyes are just disruptive in the backfield with knockdowns and hurry ups. They just like completely disrupt the backfield of their opponent. On the rookie of the year, I don't really know who will win it. Farias is probably my pick, but Clarence Ranlano, who of course is a Pittsburgh Steeler, has had a great rookie season, and he was a late draft pick, which makes me happy. He's going to probably be my Hollingsworth, and I'll explain that maybe in a different one. But he was a fifth round pick, and he's just come in and done good. Uh, and then, of course, on the defensive side of the ball, it'll be interesting to see who gets it. I think Matos should get it, but who knows? Um, the only other thing is, so we are now trending towards the end of the season, so playoffs should be done within the next week. We'll flip the season probably next week. So it would be a great time to join because you'll be joining as we flip the season and start moving into free agency and the draft. And I think we may do things a little bit differently with the draft this year, where we may do multiple rounds and live. Uh, I still got to think about that. But I am really trying my hardest to keep SNCFL and WWPF aligned from a schedule perspective. So that way they complete their seasons roughly about the same time and they start their seasons roughly about the same time. So that there's that unity between the two leagues. But the draft is an event into itself. Frankie has always done a great job. I've asked him to continue to help me there. He live streams it, and it's fun. Gary's still around. He gives me pointers from time to time. Of course, if you follow SNCFL, you know the name Gary because he's the defending national championship with the University of Miami, and he's on pace to potentially defend it. Hope to see you soon. That's kind of the recap here. And if you want me to do very specific videos around Draft Day Sports Pro Football, definitely let me know. I can probably do some game planning and some other videos like what I do with SNCFL and maybe even do some things around how I approach free agency. I'm not the best coach. Peter was hands down probably the best coach I've ever seen. There are a couple other coaches in this league that I think are better than me, but just a shameless plug for me. If you notice, I'm not bad. This year is probably one of my best seasons outside of the one that I was 14-2. I have won a league championship, but my biggest claim to fame is I just get myself in the playoffs every year. In what has traditionally been one of the more competitive uh, divisions around. However, I will tell you that it's not like the AFC West. there was a time where the AFC North was probably the most competitive when you had Chris Bio and I'm struggling with his name, Iceman at Baltimore. But uh, hope to see you soon. And if you like this video, click the like. I'll put the links in there, and we hope to see you joining our league soon. Thank you. Bye.